Okay.
Still in park brain.
Yeah, sorry. Hey, Rodney Oth here. I'm with the Park People podcast. Today we have a special edition called for the CampFest, our virtual conference coming up at the end of February. I'm here today with Kate Mannerings. She is the Client Services Manager for Percussion Play, and she's going to talk with us a little bit about her session about how nature and rhythm and music kind of come together in a harmonious way and how camps are using music in their programming. So, Kate, thanks for joining the podcast. How are you today?
Very well, thanks. And thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're excited to have you at CampFest. We're excited to have your session. Why don't you give us like the 30,000 overview, a foot view of what you're going to talk about and why people should be interested in tuning in and join us live.
Sure. Well, I'm here on behalf of Percussion Play, and we're going to be talking about how camps are using nature and music and rhythm to create inclusive play spaces, sometimes featuring musical instruments, sometimes those supplied by Percussion Play or created by the camps themselves as part of an activity. But it's about how music is bringing camp visitors together, creating opportunities for inclusive play, and also looking at how interest in nature and the world around us can be brought into that through musical play as well.
So what are you seeing with, so you guys obviously have, the name of your business, Percussion Play, right? And a lot of times those are added on to playground spaces, I believe, and sometimes they're standalone. Is that correct? Attractions?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It
How
really
are they?
crops up in a number of different places. We came out of working predominantly within parks and recreation. We've been doing this for a number of years. So parks and rec and education settings were really where we started creating musical instruments that go into these spaces that can be accessed all times of the day, all days of the year, for people who maybe don't have musical instruments at home or don't have access to music lessons, and creating inclusive play around music. And in doing that, we've then seen interest develop in these different spaces like camps and in library gardens and children's museums and all these other little
Oh,
areas where
interesting.
play is happening, but it's not necessarily park focused. But anywhere that you want to create something that everyone of every ability can do, of every different kind of background, it crosses language barriers, and it's also easy to incorporate as a standalone space.
So walk me through how a typical summer camp might, what's the space look like? Where are they typically locating these? If there's any rhyme or reason, maybe they're all different. And then are they intentionally incorporated into their programming as a session or as an activity, or is it more of a, something that kids can use in their free time, or maybe it's both. So like how are you seeing it, kind of being utilized in that space?
Yeah, I mean, it's a real mixture. We've seen the musical instruments being used as part of a programmed activity, but it's also a great downtime activity in the sense that you can have it there set up permanently, and you don't necessarily need to staff that. So kids can access it during free time, gives them some direction and something to do in that time, but also means that they are interacting, cooperating with each other, problem solving, all of those other skills that you would want from maybe a more set programmed activity. We've also seen it used in those sessions where maybe you've got arrivals happening, you've got families checking kids in, and you need something that they can immediately go and do while parents are being spoken to and the handover's happening. And again, kids who've maybe never met each other before can do something together that's very simple, very easy to lead for the staff, and can just bridge that barrier of not knowing anyone, maybe not being able to speak the same language in some cases, and kind of help welcome people into the site.
Nice. Well,
Location wise, it's a real
yeah.
mix as well.
Okay, it sounds like it. Yeah. How much space is a typical, I'm going to call it, for lack of a better term, because I'm not the expert in this space, but as a standalone, I'm thinking this as a standalone like operation versus not attached to a
Yeah.
playground, right? So in that scenario, where I think it's probably more likely at camp to be in that scenario, it sounds like what you were
Mhm.
talking about. How big of a space? How many elements? Kind of what is the traditional cost of one of these installations? If you could walk me through some of that detail.
Yeah, sure. Space-wise, we see a couple of different layouts happening with camps. We either see a dedicated music space that's in a few feet square, perhaps, with 4 or 5 instruments where you can get a number of kids in together, generally making eye contact, playing together, a bit like playing in a band. You want a few pieces that people can do at the same time to foster that cooperative play element. The other layout that we see quite often is using individual instruments in different locations, maybe on a pathway or kids between maybe the area and accommodation space, creating a trail or an activity that moves people from one place to another. If you stop at one instrument and you play for a minute, then you hear another one off in the distance, it inspires people to move and explore. So there's a real kind of two camps with camps as to what layouts we go for.
Sure.
Cost wise, it's relatively simple to create a music space without being a huge financial outlay. It's going to be much more cost effective than creating a big kind of playground area. You don't need safety surfacing because players stay on the ground. So you can install alongside an existing pathway, or you can create a standalone area for the instruments. But a few $1,000s will get you a decent collection of instruments that will give you that kind of play benefit. It's a great add-on as well. We understand that people's budgets go in so many different directions. If you've recently had a park installed and want to add something extra in a couple of years' time, music is a good add-on as well to a space, and it doesn't necessarily have to take up a lot of room.
Right. How long do you have any data, maybe data is the wrong term, but any anecdotal evidence of what the interaction time can be with kids? Like, do they spend a lot of time on an instrument, or is it more of like a free-flowing thing? And it probably is different based on if there's multiple kids there interacting versus if it's a single activity. But, as far as like if you're a camp director, how long is this going to keep kids busy for maybe? What's your thought on that, if you have a thought on that?
Yeah. I would say it definitely depends on the kid, their play behavior, but I think music is something that really caters to different play styles. You'll get those kids that want to kind of run in, try every instrument, run from one between the other and have a go, and that really gets the movement and the activity for those kids. But then you also see children who maybe want something a little bit more mindful, that don't necessarily engage in that boisterous running around play, where music really ticks the boxes for them because they can sit, they can figure it out, they can come back to it. And certain instruments lend themselves to a as well. So something like a samba drum is very simple to play. The reward is very fast. Whereas something like a babel drum or maybe a cavatina that you play color mapping with a music book keeps kids coming back to it because there's that progression and that development there. You might not master it the first time around, but especially if you've got kids that come over multiple years, grow into an instrument like that, where maybe you could play a simple song at the beginning and then come back to it next time and play something a little bit more tricky. It does offer that progression too.
Right. Interesting. And I guess my last question is like, what is the age range that you find, this is really kind of targeted to and appropriate for? Obviously any age range can play. I'm sure adults mess around with them and have fun too, but like there's probably a sweet spot, I'm guessing, in age range. Is that true, or?
It really varies. We work within all age ranges. I would say kind of the real kind of core of our instruments design would maybe be from kind of 7 years to kind of 15, 18 years. But saying that, we do tons of work within older age ranges. We work in the early years a lot. We're even working in care homes within Alzheimer's and dementia care. So there are some real interesting results coming out of every age range on the spectrum there.
Right. So if you're a camp that specializes in younger kids or teenagers, or it's a continuing education program or something, and maybe you're attracting older adults, the product, the service, the instruments can kind of span that entire thing without having to be changed or updated or whatever. Okay, very interesting.
That's it. And And there are different instruments that definitely suit different age ranges. So perhaps if you're catering to that older education range, if you want something that's more teenager specific, we've got things like cajon drums where you sit on top of them to play, and you can do that in little groups and create kind of something more suited to that teen range. Whereas then if you're catering to those younger kids, we've got lots of scaled down instruments in rainbow colors and very interactive and bright and colorful. Really suits those. And what we'll be talking about in the webinar is the nature inspired instruments and how that's really drawing in all of those age ranges, from the younger kids who are attracted to the colors and the shapes to the older age range that are perhaps then interested in how these shapes and these instruments and these animals and insects are seen within the environment around them.
Oh, very interesting. Very interesting. What's the big takeaway? So I don't want to give away too much. Obviously, we want people to come to your session and not learn everything here. That's not really true. But anyway, what's the big takeaway that you hope people kind of, if they're looking to attend the session, what should they expect to kind of learn? You kind of went over it right there, but is there anything in addition to the whole nature play scenario that you think people should know about the session?
I think especially with music, a big thing is inclusivity. So whether it's instruments like the ones that we design and manufacture, or it's something that is just a drum circle, or maybe homemade instruments as part of a program session, there's ways to incorporate music in the outdoors that get kids outside in the sunshine, getting that fresh air, that vitamin D, away from screens, cooperating with each other. And even the staff can be involved in this and achieve a level of kind of staff well-being in this activity as well. So it's really about how music and the use of it in nature is for everybody.
Nice. Well, thank you for the information. You're the expert here, and I'm just the guy asking questions that he's not qualified to ask. So, is there anything I should have, if you were me, is there anything I should have asked you that we didn't cover? Anything that we need to add to this conversation?
I don't think so. I'm sure that there'll be much more to touch on in the webinar, and anyone attending will meet my colleague Alex as well, who they may have well seen at some of the camps conferences that have happened over the last couple of years. So hopefully we'll be familiar faces, and people will be interested to see us.
Okay, great. Well, hey, Kate, I appreciate all of your time. Thank you for everything. We're looking forward to your session.
Welcome.